Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Malash, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to our virtual town hall meeting to discuss the October 6th bond referendum. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have 90 minutes set aside this evening for some discussion, some questions and answers, and to continue to share information regarding the October 6th bond referendum to impact the Cherry Hill Public School System. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists this evening. First, from our Board of Education, our Board President, Mr. Ben Ovadia, our Board Vice President, Ms. Miriam Stern, Board members, Mr. Joel Mayer, and Mrs. Gina Winters. Also on the panel tonight is the Chair of the Zone PTA, Mrs. Janet Hung, and Mr. Bob Garrison, who represents Garrison Architects. And then from the school district, Mrs. Sugars is here at the table with Mr. Garrison and I, and then offering support and providing much needed technical support and guidance as we go through this evening. To my right, you can't see them off screen, are Mr. Mark Plavinsky, our Director of Technology, and Mrs. Barbara Wilson, our Public Information Officer. So we've done virtual town halls, and we've done some hybrid town halls and some in-person town halls. And because of the timing of the year and it being a Sunday evening, we decided that a virtual town hall would be the best approach for us to undertake at this time in order to answer questions and share information. As I said, we have 90 minutes set aside. We're looking to finish up by about 8 o'clock. And to go through with the structure of this evening, we're going to have Mr. Ovadia is going to give just a brief overview about the referendum, where we are in the process. After he does that, I'll talk about how we're going to go through and how people can ask questions, and how we will respond. And then we'll talk about jumping right into it. Again, our focus this evening is specifically on the referendum on October the 6th. We will not be taking questions or comments or entertaining questions on other topics this evening. We do have a board meeting in 2 nights on September the 20th. If you have other topics you'd like to address, you certainly may always email us or attend the board meeting on Tuesday evening, either in person or virtually. So, Mr. Ovadia, if you'd like to kick us off with some overview.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Malash, and thanks to everyone who has joined us on a Sunday evening on this important topic. I didn't want, we've been out and about, and we've talked to so many community stakeholders that have been engaged in this process. I didn't want to go through and do a full presentation, but I did want to take the better part of 4 minutes to just talk about where we are and where we've been. And then tee that up to see what questions are out there that we can really engage with as a panel, and hopefully get to as many questions as possible this evening in the time that we've allotted to really engage. But as Dr. Malash said, if there's something left over after tonight, email us, contact us, come to the next board meeting, meet us at a back to school night. So there will be many other opportunities to engage, but we did want to make sure to do this at this juncture in time. And so by way of setting the table for this evening, I would tell you that our first starting place is that Cherry Hill has been underfunded by the state of New Jersey for 30 years. This isn't a new issue. We were talking about this at Zone PTA and in PTAs and as a district 2 decades ago. And certainly we had an intense and established effort more than a decade ago. So that has been proven over time. It became an issue that has spiraled in many ways, and we see its effects to this day in dramatic ways. The last time our school district did put out a bond referendum that was successful was 23 years ago. It was for $52 million. At the time, that board had identified closer to $150 million of work that should be done and needed to be done, but didn't feel that it could get past a vote. And so they really shrunk it to $52 million, put it out, and were successful. The next time we actually went out for a public vote was 2018, and that bond did not pass, but it did really make our citizenry in Cherry Hill intimately aware of how great the needs were and that there would need to be a mechanism. In the failure of 2018, we've spent the better part of 4 years teeing up a new version bond that has had a ton of community input into and also an elongated process. Pieces of that are critically important is we changed our architect of record to Garrison Architects in 2020. Bob, who's joining us tonight on the panel, has been in every school, crawled through almost every crevice, but his firm Garrison Architects, they are the architect of record for 72 K-12 districts in the state of New Jersey. Most of those are in South Jersey. Bob has been intimately involved in presenting and engaging the public, together between Mr. Garrison, district administrators, the Board of Education. We have had over 40 meetings to school and community groups in building this bond and in seeking input. January of this year, we sent off letters seeking approval from the state of New Jersey, seeking their partnership, having established the parameters of the bond. And we have received those letters back with a commitment from the state. And so that, so it really is this year where legally we have engaged with the state to prepare what is on the ballot on October 6th. One of the things that we spent a ton of time thinking and talking and engaging about is that there are many, many needs in the district. However, the system that we have employed here in what's going on is we do renovation, and we do that for several reasons. Not because we might otherwise love to do renovation, but renovation from a fiscal stewardship perspective brings us a much higher commitment per square foot of renovation or of school educational space than new construction would, or really than anything else would. So that we are getting closer to 40% of a state share of support of what we're doing in what we're proposing. And that adds up with a $363 million bond, which is what we believe we need for to do all the repairs and all the as new in the building. So we basically believe that with that 363, we will get, and we now have a commitment from the state that they will partner with us to give us $113 million if the bond referendum on October 6th is successful. So that number turns to zero if it's not successful, but if it is, we have letters that we've received from Trenton that put them in to supporting our efforts here in Cherry Hill to $113 million. And in the context of that fair funding where I started, that's a dramatic way to recoup losses that we have no other system or no other mechanism to get. What's important to know is that we have 19 schools, and each one will get significant renovation and additional work to make them great places to learn and be, something that will make the schools feel new, even though we're not going the new route because we make, you know, we get so much less participation from Trenton. It would cost our community much more to build new, but these will feel new in the system that is on the October 6th question or referendum. So that's important to know. Critical work, and that is categorically, we have safety issues that will be addressed, security, infrastructure, the guts of buildings, air quality and air conditioning, roofs that need attention, ADA work and updates. Everything that is done in the referendum will be to code. All of it will be modernized and ADA compliant. We will have energy efficiency in our schools, all-purpose rooms that are needed in many schools. And basically from every aspect of schools, HVAC is one I don't think I mentioned, but from every aspect like that, there will be significant real work, and the needs of our schools are pressing. We've done many tours of schools. We've heard a lot of feedback about schools. We know that the need is something that is well known among our students, among our staff, among our families, among our professionals, and among all of our stakeholder groups that interact with the schools. We find ourselves as a community in a place where we need to do something now. This is a major investment, generational investment in Cherry Hill's tomorrow. And we have really tried to engage the public in thinking, what does Cherry Hill tomorrow's mean? What is it about? And as we've engaged the public, one of the things that we hear time and time again is that the foundation of our community is our schools. And so it's important that that they're in good shape. And so in wrapping up this piece of it, for many years, we didn't get the money that we needed. We had to prioritize educational excellence. The education that we've had in Cherry Hill for years is renowned, not just in our state, but in our country. It's something to be preserved and to be appreciated and to be built upon. But our facilities did suffer. And we have in this moment an opportunity for Trenton, to a small extent Washington, but mostly for Trenton to come in and be a partner in renovating and really making these schools great looking, great feeling, and modernized. And the time to act and to discuss this and to engage with this as a community is now. Now, no one is telling anybody how to vote, but we do believe as a Board of Education, as a district, as a community, the stakeholder groups, everyone that has engaged, that we need to find out about this and make the best decision for us to move forward. And so with that, I open it up to this evening, and we'd like to take questions, either, well, there's no in the room, so questions, if you'll raise your hand, we can go one by one. And as I said earlier, we want to get to as many as possible. So I think Dr. Melange will tell us a little bit more instructions wise, and then we'll go question by question.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. Thank you for the introduction and for getting us going this evening. Yes, so we'll plan to go through questions. We will alternate between folks who are on the line, who are on the Zoom call, and folks, when you ask your questions, you can put your hand up. Mr. Avadia will call on you. We will allow you to unmute so that you can speak. We'll give everybody who wants to speak an opportunity to speak once this evening to make their comments. Please make sure that when we look at your name so that we can see your names in the list, so Mr. Avadia can call on you, that all the names are appropriate. There is a name that appears in the list that if you put your hand up, we will not call on you. The name begins with a period and then the word bond. There's a second word that comes after that. If you put your hand up, you will not be called on. So if you would like to ask something, please change your name. And we will go through. Mrs. Wilson will give us updates as we go through this evening, time-wise, just so we can stay where we are with the focus. And we will limit ourselves to finish up at 8 o'clock this evening. So, Mr. Avadia, if you'd like to start on the line, we do have a single question that came through ahead of time that we can do, but let's start on the line because we're definitely going to have more on the line. We also have some other questions and some information that folks have asked at meetings and leading up to this that we have that's ready to go to ask as well. All right.
First up is Tammy. And Tammy, if you'll state your name and municipality and get started.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, hi, my name is Tammy Gilraden. Thank you, in Cherry Hill. Thank you for allowing community members to have this time to talk about the bond. Couple items. In the spring of 2019, after the 1218 bond failed, there was a group that got together and an idea for a fundraising committee was put together. Was that ever done from the board, from the administration? And if it wasn't, how come wasn't it done? Second, unfortunately, for the sake of transparency, this week, the governor's office announced that they're allowing utility companies to increase the natural gas portion of everyone's bills. They will be going up 25%, and that's going to be starting in October. So that comes out to approximately $300 increase per household. So when you're deciding for or against the bond, be mindful that how that will affect your family budget in conjunction with your assessed value. In addition, if the bond passes, will the Board of Ed help households that will be directly affected by this extremely high increase in property taxes? Will they be doing something to help people in case there's foreclosures in the community because of the increase to the bond and to their property taxes? Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Thank you, Ms. Gilraden. Let me start with where you started in terms of the fundraising committee, and I'll pass it to Ms. Stern, who with Mrs. Sugars is doing our DNF to kind of take the first stab at it, but I want to make sure we get every aspect answered. So we'll start with Ms. Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Ovadia, and thank you, Tammy, for calling in. And I'm sorry, I think Goldraden was your last name. I wasn't sure I heard it clearly, so Ms. Goldraden. I just want to speak to the first piece. So I actually was a participant, and you referred to the Alternative Funding Committee, and I was a participant on that. We met several times and came up with 2 recommendations for how Cherry Hill Public Schools could seek other funding outside of our taxpayer burden. And a little bit of history. Cherry Hill many years ago, probably decades ago at this point, used to have a grant writer on staff whose job it was to look for and secure grants for different needs in the district. And the district found that over time, the grant writer was not successful because Cherry Hill was often being turned down from getting grants because we didn't qualify with other, partly because perhaps of our socioeconomic situation or our funding many years ago. So to be fiscally responsible, the district stopped employing a grant writer. Fast forward to 2019, as you referred to, and our committee recommended that we do move forward with re-engaging a grant writer again. And this past year, I'm very proud to say that the Board of Ed approved a grant writing request for, we had put out an RFP, and we had a grant writing company that worked and found us some grants. We recently discussed in our last committee meeting, so very timely, that we would like to see the grant writer have more success with finding and attaining grants for the district. And we are currently evaluating that and seeing whether or not it makes sense to continue with that company or perhaps to look at other ways. So it's very important that we continue to look beyond our taxpayers to find monies for our district. There are, I wouldn't even know how to speak to the number of grants that we do get from the federal government and even from the state government as well. Currently in our current budget for many items. We just got another grant last week, actually, for one of our, some of our elementary programs. So we continue to look far and wide, and we continue to evaluate the effectiveness of that. So that's absolutely a priority for the district and for the Board of Ed.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Stern. I think Ms. Goldraden, we could always do more when it comes to sourcing opportunities to help families. In other communities, that's more developed, but we do aggressively seek to partner with our township to understand the programs that are out there to help. Because you asked about foreclosure and you asked about financial strain. When we've been able to provide meals in large numbers as well, but there's certainly more we could do and that we would be interested in doing. But I think, you know, we have guidance counselors, we have an administration that's very interested. I'll give you another example in the field of mental health. You know, we're not just trying to be a resource for the students, but for the whole families as well with our partnership with Care Solace. So there's always more to be done. There's always more help to be. And I think that is something, you know, as we think about our school district and what an anchor institution it is in our community, that we could be out there developing that even further. But every attempt has been made on many fronts to really support families. Another way is through education. We've done parent university. We've had, you know, there's the engagement that happens between staff and PTAs. There's the engagement that happens between the board and PTA. So, you know, there is an effort to get out there and to do more, but we could always do more. And those are the two in terms of, you know, the bills that are going up in town. It's one of those, you know, we have a locus of control here. There are things, you know, that we don't. So I did see an article about natural gas. Now, what that means, how sustainable that is, and what it means 5, 10, 15 years down the road, I don't know, but that's something we'll continue to pay some attention to. And is there anything, Dr. Malash, you would want to add on this?
Mr. Garrison has something he would like to jump in with, Mr. Ovadia.
Great.
Thank you very much. And that's an excellent question. And all of us are New Jersey taxpayers, so we weren't thrilled at that news about the utility cost increase. The bond referendum and some of the improvements that Mr. Ovadi talked about, especially on the HVAC side, some of the things that are in the bond will actually help us save energy. The digital controls that are going into all of the buildings, we're changing out boilers specifically for gas conservation. That'll enable us to be more efficient at those schools. When these improvements are made, we will go back to the PSC&G New Jersey Smart Start program and solicit rebates, bringing more money back to the community. Finally, another help to our residents, our older residents, is our New Jersey Senior Tax Freeze Program, rebate program, and it's on the website of Cherry Hill Tomorrow for all that information.
All right, I just want to go to the next one then. That name is Yaroslava. It is your turn to address your full name and municipality, though, please. You just need to unmute via your computer. Right, we may need to come back. Yaroslava, are you able to unmute on your computer or phone? Okay, we're not going to forget about you, but we'll have to come back. Martin, you are next.
Thank you. This is Martin McCarthy from Cherry Hill. I just have some comments, not really questions. I think, for the referendum, we cannot say no to a 30% plus subsidy. It's just a no-brainer, okay? The school district, like any business, needs to be competitive, and we need to compare to local school systems like Marlton, Mount Laurel, Voorhees, and the bond will allow us to improve our infrastructure, and it'll just make things, it will improve the system. Not only the students will feel better, the teachers, everybody. Thirdly, we need to make this for our current and future students, so that Cherry Hill will not be considered a district that does not value education and does not value the students. So I would strongly recommend that we go with the bond, and to me, it's rather simple. With a 30% subsidy, you're not going to see something like that ever. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. We're going to try Yaroslava once again. And Yaroslava, the floor is yours if you can unmute. Yes, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that. I forgot to, anyway, turn on my microphone. I'm on the fence about the bond. I do understand that a lot of work needs to be done. When my daughter went from elementary to middle school and we took the tour, honestly, I was a little dismayed at what I saw. And but my daughter did go on to, she's at Carusi. As she plays soccer there on Wednesday nights, I take little walks around the school, and it's very disappointing in the condition of the school. I'm a little selfish here, so I'd like to see, if I would vote yes, I'd like to see that my daughter will benefit maybe for a year or two from these upgrades. So my question here is there an order that the schools will receive the upgrades that they need? Meaning, will the high schools be first, then middle, then elementary? Will it be elementary, middle, high school? will it be a mixture of all of them with, say, plumbing being done and all of them, electricity being done? I don't understand the order in which the maintenance or the upgrades will be done.
Thank you. And how do we address you? There
My
are-
full name, I'm sorry, my full name is Yaroslava Struk, or in English, they just say Jerry Struck.
So we'll
and-
say Ms. Stroop. Is that all
Well,
right?
you can, whatever, you can call me Jerry, I don't care.
Okay, all right, Jerry, and we know Cherry Hill. That's a great question, and I'm gonna port that over to Mr. Garrison.
So thank you, Jerry, and you hit the nail on the head when you started talking about how we would work the buildings with common elements. You talked about plumbing and whatnot. The way we envision this is to work with the district's construction management firm in strategizing how to build these improvements, but also not strategizing how to build, but also strategizing when it's appropriate to build and building around occupied buildings with students and staff. So one of the things that I was thinking about when we were laying this out is, of course, the roofing has to be done in the summer months. So the roofing would all be done in the summer months. I can tell you that for sure because of the exposure to the students and staff. The other thought process is we're renovating, especially at the elementaries and in all buildings, interior spaces. One way to create swing space or give us some space so we can work 12 months of the year instead of just the summer would be to build the all-purpose rooms at the 6 schools. This would do a few things. One, it would help us complete those projects and then move students out into those areas and then renovate similar areas in the building. Two, we want to make sure that we're consistent in our design standards. What do I mean by that? If we're going to have, and we envision this, a stage that it's consistent, that the theater lighting and sound is consistent, the flooring is consistent. We have consistency in the components of the bond, consistency in the roofing, consistency in the HVAC, consistency in the electric that you pointed out. So it'll be a strategy based on constructability, relieving space, working with the construction manager, and also knowing what the marketplace will bear with our contractors. This is a 5-year build. So we ask for patience, but we envision that this will be completed in the 5-year period that we laid out.
And this would begin next summer. When would it begin?
So the bond referendum is successful. There are 2 fronts that we have to look at. Mrs. Sugars here to my left, to your right on the screen, has to go through the financial portion of that. The maximum authorization to borrow, which this would be the $363 million, then that has to go through a legal process, a 60 and 90-day process for vetting. The bonds are publicly sold in order for the district to get the money. While she's doing that part of it, I'll be doing the design with environmental resolutions on the site work, our construction manager partner, again, engineering partners that we have, TTI, environmental, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll be developing the construction packages so that we don't lose any time. But specifically, we would envision, let's say, doing the roofs in the first summer, 2023. We have to keep our attention on supply chain. Supply chain, and I was just mentioning to Mrs. Sugars next to me that I took construction bids at another one of my districts, $11 million HVAC project down in Cape May County. The lead time for the rooftops and the unit ventilators was 26 weeks. And that was with the bids that we received. So we got to keep our eye on supply chain and do it logically, observe, compatibility with materials and whatnot, and put all those factors together and strategize a plan. And that plan will be shared with the community and obviously with the principals and the administration, the board for input, and the construction official and all the officials in Cherry Hill Township that will be reviewing these plans and helping us along our way.
Okay, well, I appreciate the answer. Perhaps it'll help me make the right decision, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Marsh, can we turn to our pre-curated question someone sent in, I think? I don't know if you or Mrs. Wilson has.
Yes. Yep. I'm all set. So Steve Robbins sent in this question and said, assuming the referendum passes, what will be the expected capital budget needs for the next 5 years in addition to the bonded projects? And what percent of those projects will be able to be completed within budget cap constraints? Mrs. Sugars, you want to take the first shot at that?
Sure. So one of the things that we have discussed as we've been going through the referendum process is that the board will actually be contributing money towards the cost of the repayment of the debt, and that will come out of our capital reserve account. So we're estimating that we will be appropriating $4 million out of our capital reserve account in order to offset the bond and principal payments that will be paid out of our debt service account. And so we know right there that we have $4 million committed to that bond repayment. We also know that there are certain projects that we took out of the bond in order to bring it down to our borrowing capacity level. So there are things such as improvements to our kitchens, purchases of furniture, some other projects, smaller projects that we pulled out actually of the bond referendum in order to complete those projects another way and bring down the cost of the bond referendum. So we will definitely focus on those types of projects as we look at what our capital projects needs are over the next couple of years. We typically use capital reserve funds, which would not be subject to a budget cap to complete our larger projects. And so I would anticipate as we move forward that we will continue to do that, and that our focus will be on those projects that we removed out of the bond referendum.
Mrs. Sugars, I know I don't know anyone who's going to add anything to that thorough explanation. It sure is not going to be me. Seeing no hands up, I thought maybe we would turn to Janet on our panel, who, as Dr. Milano said, is our zone PTA Vigo president. It may be chair, I don't know, but she's at the top of the chain. Put it that way. I know she wanted to make a statement, and then we'll go back to questions. I just saw a hand went up.
Thank you, Ben. I wanted to make a follow-up to my comment on July 26th at the Board of Ed action meeting. The Cherry Hill Zone PTA Executive Board at that time unanimously supports and continues to support the upcoming bond referendum. The decades of chronic underfunding from the state and federal governments is something that can and will never be made whole. The bond referendum is the only mechanism that allows Cherry Hill Public Schools to get approximately $113 million paid through the state and federal funding. The bond is an investment in our community. Our school buildings are a community asset, and the bond will provide our children, future students and residents, and town stakeholders 19 like-new schools. Our kids and our beloved teachers and staff deserve a safe, healthy, and modernized environment to learn and grow. This is now the time to invest in our future and our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you also, Janet, for inviting the board to and administration to PTA meetings, because in addition to being at back to school nights, we really have tried to be at many. I know sometimes we're like ships passing in the night, going, it's almost like, well, anyway, but it's been great for Janet to really open some doors for us to engage on questions at a building level as well. All right, next we have Ann Einhorn, I should say, who is next on the line for comment and question.
Hi, I would just like to mention the fact that two things that would help people and their tax increases. Number one, for the seniors particularly, there's the senior freeze program, but also in addition is the program, I believe it's called Acorn, that was announced this past week by the governor, in the fact that going back to your 2019 tax return, if you've made under $250,000 that year, you will get $1,500 back, which in some homes would be 4 years of bond tax payments. So if Ms. Sugars has information on that, I think it would really be important for the community of Cherry Hill to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in the district notice about this meeting is actually, I believe, a link to the senior program, and maybe it's Acorn. I thought it was called Anchor, but whatever it is, I'm sure we can get that out as well in communications. And thank you for that suggestion. Next on my list is someone identified as Amy. So Amy, if you can give us your full name and municipality, that would be wonderful. And then the floor is yours.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. So Amy Adler in Cherry Hill. And I get that, you know, a lot of people have questions. I get the financial impact of this, but I also think that on the flip side, we all need to think about the long term of this. Because I think as someone that would potentially move and is looking to come into the Cherry Hill area, they're going to think about the schools and they're going to think about the conditions. And if the bond doesn't pass, you know, it's going to be out there. People are going to be talking. It's important that we recognize that because this bond and not passing the bond and not making our schools better is going to impact the future value of our homes and the values of our homes. And I get that there's a tax impact, but I think we also need to look at the longer term picture and think about it that way.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. I would say that thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment. I don't think it needs, I think it's well put. I don't know what I could add to it. Let me go to the next caller. That is TC Field Bobrovsky. And I'm sorry if I butchered that, but if you would start with your name and municipality, and the floor is yours.
You did a great job, TC Field Bobrovsky, Cherry Hill. Where I'm coming from, because I am for the bond, and a big reason why I'm for the bond is not just because of all the benefits that it's going to provide to the students, to the teachers, to the administrators, it's also to the community as a whole. But it's also because not only am I thinking about how it's going to benefit if it passes, I am terrified of what will happen if it doesn't. And why I am terrified is because 2018, the bond was far less than what it is now. All of the pricing has compounded because we haven't been able to address a lot of these issues because we've needed a bond to pass. The other potential future that I'm terrified if it doesn't pass is what happens in other school districts. When you have a school building that you have to shut down for repairs, what happens to those children? Those children have to still get an education. They can be bused and assigned to any school in the district. So you could be on the west side of town with 3 kids in elementary school going to 3 different elementary schools from east to west. And the traffic that that's going to impose on everybody, the burden that that would put on the people who are moving into town or already into town. And then when the school is fixed up, would they even get into the school again? Those are the things that terrify me. Like, I want to know when my kid is going to go to school, that they're going to go to the school that I felt that they were going to go to when I came here and I moved here. And one of the great things about the Cherry Hill School District is that, yes, these buildings are in dire repair. On the upside, the teaching, the content, the curriculum has always been there. My kids are still getting a great education despite the circumstances that the buildings and the state that they're currently in. But I would just like to hear if there were any other potential futures if it doesn't pass, because if it doesn't pass and we're here again in 4 years, how much more money is that going to cost us? How much higher is our taxes going to go in order to help cover those costs? So I'm trying to look at it from both. What's short term? Short term is, yeah, it's going to cost more in my taxes, $400, $500, $600, whatever that may be per year. But long term, if we don't do something now, what's that going to look like in 4 years? And I think it's very short-sighted to think of just what your taxes are going to look like right now compared to what they could be in 4 years from now if this doesn't pass. So I don't know if that's as much of a question as much as it was more of a statement, but I just wasn't sure if there were any other potential futures if it doesn't pass that need to be considered and that people need to be made aware of. Thank you for your time.
So is Field Bobrovsky. This is a good question with not a totally satisfying answer. I mean, I can say this. I can say the district is going to do everything, and the board is going to do everything. As the community, we're going to do everything to weather whatever happens. But I think what you're touching on is the severity of what's happening. There has to be intervention to do something about it. It's not an issue of, well, if we don't do it, maybe we could wait 5 to 10 years and then just, maybe the political climate would be better. Maybe the price of gas, whatever it is, like maybe we could just hold off. And I think, what we've really discovered in studying this for many issues. I mean, I think even 6, 7 years ago, people knew there would have to be a sizable bond of some kind at some point. But yeah, on this one, we've worked probably for the better part of 4 years. So what if this isn't the time? You're pointing to a lot of what it is, which is you have to start to really look deeply at what else is possible. We're not going to get we're not going to get the money from Trenton at all. So then you're thinking about, what could we do in going out again? So it's one of those things where there are the places to look, none of which are great. I will say we have always engaged the community, in putting out something that we thought people would get into. We'll have to engage the community again. This is a community level issue. This isn't my bond or Dr. Malash's bond or Garrison Architects bond. This is something that we've built together. When you think, I know it's historic. Someday I'm going to figure out how historic it is, but I think this amount of meetings to engage the community before putting something out to really scope it out, I'm sure it's historic in some way. I don't know if it's historic internationally or globally or intergalactically or on a state level, but I look at the time it's taken and the commitment it's been, and it has been very hard just from a time perspective, forgetting everything else. So we will have to, really study it. But a lot of the things that you're saying is correct. People will know that our building footprint is in serious issue and that we have to avoid something like catastrophic things. And we will not let people be unsafe. That is not, no matter what happens, we're not going to do that. But the shuffling and the figuring out and figuring out how we can educate the kids, which is our commitment, it's going to take, a ton of work and effort, and it will be something not ideal. But we will. I don't want people to think that we will just say, well, we had something and people should have gone for it. We will work hard to figure out how to educate and be excellent. And I will guarantee we're going to have to keep kids safe. That is absolutely mission critical. But it puts us in a situation where there aren't fantastic next level options. We will have to work doubly hard and knowing that we don't have phenomenal places to go. But we will know, we do know, I mean, this is not a problem that's never occurred before. We know where we'll have to look. It just will be incredibly, I believe, painful. But we're committed to that work. This Board of Education will have to, and we will, and we'll engage our professionals and our experts and all the people in our system that really care about kids and would never do something to jeopardize kids. But it's going to be challenging. But at the same time, we will have to do it. However, we have spent the 4 years building this so that we don't have to face something incredibly dire. So we're hopeful that people will do the investigation. People have to vote in a way they're comfortable. They shouldn't vote because I believe they should vote a certain way. But we are encouraging people take the time to be educated, because a lot of smart people sat in a lot of rooms over a long period of time. And this is what we came up with. All right, that was way longer than I intended to talk.
Mr. Avadia, this
Yes.
is Barbara Wilson. I'm just checking in with a time check. We are now at 7:15 p.m.
Yes, thank you. Good of you to do it. I feel like I took the last 30 minutes and I apologize. We're going to go then to Laura Pendergast, who is next to participate.
Hi, good to see everyone. I am calling just because I am a special ed parent, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the ways that the bond might benefit special education students, kids with special needs, as well as the way that other projects that you're doing in the district might benefit the special education community.
Excellent question. Let's turn that to Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. So we
Dr. Malash, you're not coming through for me, but maybe it's just me. I don't think we can hear.
I can't hear Dr. Malash either.
Okay.
Let me try a different microphone.
Yes, yes, that works.
Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Garrison. So we often talk about the program that we have for children who are identified with an IEP or with a 504 within our district. And I would contend that we have probably the best program for children from 3 years old till 21 years old right here in Cherry Hill. The referendum includes projects that will impact every single one of our school buildings, from the Malberg Early Childhood Center through all the rest of the schools, including the alternative high school program that's here at the Lewis Administration Building. There are specific needs to meet the ADA requirements. The ADA law passed 32 years ago, which we celebrated this summer. There are some real physical needs within the inside of our schools that will be addressed by this referendum to address the changes that have taken place and the needs that exist, that when these schools were built, 50 and more years ago, the code and the guidelines just didn't exist at that time. We look at the breadth of the program that we offer in terms of the program specific classrooms and needs for individual types of programs that we have within the district. That'll all be addressed through the referendum. Mr. Garrison.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. A couple other things, and you're talking specifically about the improvements that are in the bond. With regard to ADA, that's exterior improvements, removing the barrier to entry into our buildings. But more importantly, interior, all the door classrooms, ADA hardware, hallway bathrooms with the clearances. And something that, two other things that I was sitting here thinking about when you mentioned the ADA Act that I failed to mention in previous remarks is the American with Disability Act is also lighting and noise, right? These are very things that are in tune to our population. So with our lighting replacements, we can go ahead and put those dimmable LED lighting into our spaces that we'll be renovating. And on the HVAC side, I can't imagine, because I'm sitting here listening to my left here to the window air conditioning unit run with high noise. Obviously, our HVAC equipment that's being replaced is going to be a lot more user-friendly with regard to decibel levels. So just a couple things in addition I thought of.
That's great. Thank you. We'll go to Leo Flynn on the line.
Hi there. Yes, Leo Flynn in Cherry Hill here. Is there anything that you learned in the failure to pass in 2018 that you could identify, that you have identified, that you've put into place now to, any learnings from that experience to help this cause now? And maybe another way of asking the question is, I'm thinking about your average Cherry Hill resident. There's a huge question in this to answer for themselves with regards to an increase in their taxes now, but also the health of their property value over, perhaps a generation or two. And that's a very weighty matter for them. And do they know what's at stake? Cherry Hill bond referendum, that's strikes me as I know that's the matter at hand, but it's a little wonky sounding, it's a little abstract sounding. And I'm wondering, back to my first point, how are you all thinking about motivating people to get educated, to get involved on this, and to vote their mind on it?
Thank you, Mr. Flynn, for chiming in. I think I would tell you just in brief, the funny thing on the board level is we actually, we don't have, I don't think anyone on the current board, who was there in 2018. I mean, I think, however, the district did a lot to listen to people in the immediate aftermath of 2018. And I would say that this board has really taken those learnings to heart. So I would say that in some scaffolding. I've spoken so much. Let me pass it to Gina for a moment to kind of jump in on just some of the stuff, because she's been doing a lot lately to speak to this.
Hi, thank you so much for your question. I just wanted to talk about it as a parent in the district who was a parent in the district in 2018 and now, just looking at the level of community engagement that we've had and communication and the mechanisms for listening to people in the community and what their concerns are. I mean, one thing I'm really struck by is this is not the board's bond or Dr. Malash's bond. This is the community's bond the community built through several years of kind of discussing and dissecting what happened in 2018. How can we build something better and something that looks really towards the future of what we want our schools to look like for the next generation of students? I mean, they're really an expression of our values. And I think to that point, board members, we've been going out to all the schools. We'll be at all the back to school nights. We've been invited to PTA meetings, are really excited to engage parents and community members there, speaking to different groups in the community, like senior citizens groups, and just really trying to get out there and communicate, what is the bond referendum about? How does it change how we vision our community for the future? Because I really think the public schools are community hubs. And there's something that our community is really proud of. When you talk to people in Cherry Hill and say, why'd you move here? They always say we moved here for the schools. I think it's core to who we are. So I really think that taking all of that together, there's a really different feeling moving into this referendum in a few weeks, that this is something that we all came together and did together for our community's future. We're here tonight to listen to everybody. We're going to be out for the next few weeks listening and talking to everybody and putting out that information. And then hopefully everybody can make the best decision for their family that they can. And that's really all we can ask. But we really are thrilled with how much the community has contributed to this process so far. It's been a long process, but we've loved working with everybody. I personally have loved talking to all the families I've seen over the past couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks of engagement and to seeing what happens in October, looking towards our community's future. Thank you.
And Janet, did you want to jump in on some of what you've seen?
I did. I wanted to, the question was about what we've learned. I think that this time around, the Board of Education, the administration did a great job of engaging the PTAs. They came, Mr. Garrison and the Board of Ed members came to several PTA zone meetings across the year. Not everybody can attend the meeting, so for them to be able to come to several meetings across the year, about every 3 or 4 months, was a great opportunity for the PTA presidents to express what's important to them in their schools. The student voice that was provided to it was something that didn't happen in 2018. The town halls, this is now the third one that we've had to engage the public, giving an opportunity to community members, families, parents, students alike to give an opinion and express their feelings about what a bond could look like for them. And also the thing that I think has been really key is the website for Cherry Hill Tomorrow, because in that explains the process, and it also gives you an opportunity to look at your own pathway in terms of a homeowner. So you can look at your elementary school, your middle school, and your high school, or both high schools, and to see with the improvements that are being made in the schools. And that can give you a vision of what, if you have a preschooler and you go to the Malberg school, you can see what a high school, because you as a parent will, and a child will benefit from the bond because of the changes that are being made. So, and somebody who's in high school can see, while they're aging out, the benefits that are coming and for the long-term benefits to the school itself. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity for everyone to see the projects, and also the projects that are similar, like the HVAC, the upgrades and the electrical systems. Those are all needed in the district. Nobody, and the roofs, nobody thinks those are exciting projects, but they're important because they all fall into the safety of the students and the teachers and staff. So it's been a great partnership for us as the PTAs to be able to provide our input at all levels of this bond. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. And I think another thing is just all the information that's been out there, but particularly we wanted to launch the public campaign, which we launched, at the end of July with a tax calculator. And we thought, we've got to put this into terms. We've got to explain what that is. But I'm not someone who, the board before us in 2018, right? They also did a lot of work to figure out what it was. Now, I think in one sense we got, one of the easiest ways to figure out what we could do different or better is to ask people. And so you're looking at an ad hoc committee, you're looking at, this town hall engagement. As a matter of fact, administration and board and PTA, just the amount of people who we take meetings with and listen to and have some perspective with over a cup of coffee, or I will tell you this, we don't get invited to meetings we don't go to. That just has not happened. And so it's one of those things. I think there's an intentionality over time that I think that people understand. I will say this also, though, we did try to, engage stakeholders and community groups early to get some endorsements too, and to figure out, where was the common ground, what would made sense. So we did, we were able to build some, institutional cooperation in that sense, in a different way than 2018, I think. And so, so we have received some of that. But it really is that all community feel. And that's what we've tried to curate and continue to, because between the board, administration, and PTA, we will have another 30 meetings before vote day. And we're talking about less than 3 weeks. So it's, there's a commitment to not being loved at home maybe for a little while, but just kind of liked and tolerated, because, this will someday end, and we'll be able to spend some time with our families. But I think there's sort of an on the road capability as well that we found the stores of strength to try to do it, because we don't want anyone to not know or not be able to engage. And that definitely takes a commitment. All right, next we will go to Pamela Barway. If you'd start with
Mr. Ovadia, excuse me, it's Barbara Wilson again doing another time check. We are at 7:30. We are just 30 minutes away from the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Pamela, we just need you to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm Pamela Barraway. I live in Cherry Hill, and I just wanted to say that I support the bond. My son is a 10th grader, and so, many of the things that will be done in the schools, he'll be, graduated before a lot of this is realized. But that's not the point. The point is that our kids deserve to like safe and current facilities to learn in. So it's a paying it forward. And so I completely support the bond. And I also wanted to say that, so I've been sharing information with my neighbors, some of whom were really unaware that there was a bond at all. And I shared the flyer off of from the website and stuff. And in addition to that flyer, I shared information off of the Fair Funding Cherry Hill website. And I would encourage everyone to look at that, because it really does provide context for fair funding and the bond. And so I guess that was more of a statement than a question, but I do actually have one question regarding ventilation with the HVAC systems. Will there be HEPA filtration up in the new systems that are put in? And that was my only question.
Mr. Garrison, I think that goes to you.
Sure. So with the HVAC replacement, at a minimum, we're going to have MERV 13 filtration.
Awesome.
Okay. and then the district will decide if there's any other enhancements.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I thought that was the case, but I never actually asked before. So anyways, thanks again. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thanks for engaging with us this evening. Let me, Dr. Melange, a lot of people, you're always meeting with a lot of people. What questions are rising to the surface?
Thanks,
Or
Mr.
actually,
Chair.
I'm sorry, one question, because we had a flurry of hands up, but since I already started, what's one question that you think we should address?
So one of the ones that came through just recently and from a couple people last week was they said they just received their ballot in the mail about upcoming expenditures for certain schools, and then wanted to know where can they find pro information, con information, just where can they get more information about the issue prior to mailing their ballot back in or prior to going to vote. So we've been, as you've mentioned, and as a number of people have mentioned this evening, we've been pointing people to the cherryhilltomorrow.com website. This is a special dedicated website that's focusing just on the bond referendum for the school district. It includes the history and the process that leads up to the bond, details of the projects and associated costs for each school, a tax impact calculator where people can enter their home's assessed value. And we always would like to remind folks it's their assessed value, what their taxes are based on, not what the sale estimate or Z estimate or Zillow estimate or realtor.com or any of those. It's the actual assessed value. Folks can also find information about the senior tax freeze, about the property tax reimbursement program for eligible residents. And then we also have additional information about each one of the schools that's on the district's YouTube channel. So if you log into YouTube or open up YouTube and search Cherry Hill School District, look under videos, you'll be able to see individual videos about the majority of the schools that have been released after each one of the back to school nights. And we can certainly, there was a caller earlier that asked about the Anchor program, and it's actually Anchor, not Acorn. It's the Anchor Property Tax Relief Program. We can certainly share information about that. That's something that was released earlier this year, I believe back in March by Governor Murphy's office, and expects to ramp up through 2025. And there are salary thresholds for households, but it goes through with the information about what folks have to do. So we can certainly share that information. Mrs. Wilson is nodding to me as well.
Excellent. All right. Well asked and answered. Yeah, just well done. Thank you. And so we're going to go to Jessica Fingerman next on the line.
Hi there. Jessica Fingerman, 1764 Morris Drive. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm recovering from COVID, so I'm a little scratchy. So I'm fully in support of the bond, but a couple of questions came through on social media, and I'm noticing that the people with those questions, for the most part, are not actually availing themselves of this opportunity to ask professionals for their expertise. So I figured I'd call in and ask the questions. Excuse me. And so one of the questions was, why is the ESSER funds not being used for this purpose? And what is the ESSER funds used for, et cetera? Thank you.
I think for that one, Mrs. Sugars, that makes the most sense to me.
Yes, actually, we are in fact using ESSER funds towards the project. We've actually have already started some prep work that we have done, as we have done some roof replacements. We have done some control work associated with those projects. And so we are anticipating quite significant dollars, about $6 million of ESSER funds that will go towards the projects. We also use some SDA money that we receive from the state towards the projects. So we will be using significant ESSER dollars towards the HVAC portion of the bond referendum.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Kristen Viglietta.
Hi, good evening. Kristen Viglietta, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I am 100% in support of the bond. I have heard a question being asked over the last couple of days. I've given what I think is the answer that I know, but perhaps you guys can provide some more clarity and some more concrete facts that we would share with folks. In terms of why Cherry Hill is doing this as a special election and not in the general election, and how much is it costing taxpayers to do as a special election? I looked it up and saw that there were about 10 schools who did the January date, that it's pretty typical to separate out school bond referendum votes from the general election. But just if you guys had some more concrete answers that could be shared throughout the community, that would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's start with Dr. Malash.
Thanks, Mr. Avadia, and thank you, Ms. Figlietta, for calling in. So when in discussion about the bond vote with the board and in the community and with administration, the decision was made to do it on a special election day so that the community was focusing on just this single issue. This is the only question that folks are voting on October the 6th. There's no other state referenda. There are no candidates running for office. We did not want this to get lost in a general election, not knowing whether or not the state would have additional questions that would be put out there and have this buried someplace on a ballot that folks weren't sure what they were voting on or what it meant. So we wanted to make sure that everybody in the community knew specifically what this was for and specifically what it was about, and to single it out. We have full election day of full voting times from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursday, October the 6th. We will have the information about the ballot locations we've received from the county clerk. That'll be on the Cherry Hill Tomorrow website. That information will also come out, to homes in the sample ballot that you'll receive from the clerk's office, so that you know where you are to go to your polling place. And Mrs. Sugars, I don't know that we have a dollar amount. Do we have a dollar amount yet for the cost?
We don't have a dollar amount, but I also wanted to add that when we did the referendum in 2018, we had our election in December, and the state had done a bond question on the November ballot related to security in schools. And we had several people say to us, I already voted on your bond. And it was not our bond. It was actually the state's bond that people had voted on. So I think to Dr. Malash's point, if you have it separate, then you know that we're focusing just on what's happening in Cherry Hill. I don't have an amount. We will receive invoices after the election. I can tell you that the election that when we did it in 2018 was about $60,000.
Thanks. I just reiterate what we said. Well, what I said earlier is that in the history of Cherry Hill, what happens on October 6th, and it can go one of two ways. I mean, I'm not saying, but either way, that will have repercussions for Cherry Hill, either way, for at least 2 decades. To get folded into November, a lot does happen. I really do think, as we went through with the board, and remember, every question that's out there today has been navigated for several years, and this is all in public meetings. It's funny, even I find it hard to go back and just find like the timestamps and stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily encouraging you to do that, but we did discuss this as a board and the importance of, given the gravity of it, in a Cherry Hill world, to do this separately. Now, then the question was when to do it separately. And I'll tell you one thing is that as we went out to the community, they said, how can you possibly wait until October? I mean, that seems irresponsible. And we went back and we said, let's be as aggressive as we possibly can. What's our date? And it just turned out that October was the first we could possibly get this thing out for vote, because there are so many steps in the process to ensure that, that the state knows, that local government knows, that the ballot is out, that, all these different things. There's a punch list of timeline. And what I heard people say time and time again is, I can't believe you're waiting. And I said, we're really not waiting. This is absolutely the soonest it can go out. Do I wish we had gone out 2 years earlier? I do, but by the time we knew we couldn't go out and not listen to everyone and not engage and not be very methodical and thorough. And this is the first date that came through. So it was one of those, like, that's why this special election, but the special election in general, because of the gravity and importance of it, for the community to voice what it is that they want. On the board, it's not a matter of what the 9 of us think. It's really a matter of what is the community's ambitions for its schools. And so we took that really to heart in this entire process. All right. Janet, I know there was a question you had kind of pre-curated in terms of who works on our buildings, who will be around, our district footprint. Did you want to bring that up?
Yes, thank you. What the PTAs have had oftentimes in our meetings had questions about who does the work, how the work is selected, it kind of in line with one of the early callers, how the work is chosen. And one of the other questions is, I have a neighbor that does roofing, why does a roof cost so much per square foot compared to if they do my neighbor's roof? And so if someone could speak to that and explain how that work is done.
Thank you, Mrs. Hung. Yes, great question. So the Division of Property Management and Construction is in charge of pre-qualifying our contractors that work on public buildings. Public buildings meaning municipal buildings, state buildings, and then obviously school buildings. So every contractor that works on a K-12 school site in New Jersey, whether it's site work, roofing, electrical, has to be Division of Property Management and Construction pre-qualified. And then their sister agency also pre-qualifies them, which is the New Jersey School Development Authority. So all of that vetting is done for us up at the state level. Garrison Architects, because I represent so many districts, also has different formulas and different requirements that we put in the bid specs to ensure keeping the contractor away from our staff and our students. The construction management firm also will play a role in that. Safety, security at the job sites, badges, those type of logistics in order to keep the population separate. At each of the schools, there'll be a certain area where contractors may park or lay down for materials. That will all be defined and discussed with the principals and not done as an afterthought, but done in the plans and specifications so that the contractors know exactly what's expected of them. With regard to local contractors and why things can cost less money if you do it that way. Well, one is the DPMC. So we have bonding and insurance requirements. And to give you an example right now, an electrical contractor, electrical personnel going to a school site, $123 an hour. So generally speaking, when a contractor comes to a job site, every single person, that's $1,000 a day. So our construction estimates take this into consideration. This is what I do. I bid public projects. We have the contingency in there. I talked about that before. The contingency is part of that 25% soft cost, which was reimbursed as part of that $113 million by state government. We want to make sure that we're protected from supply chain shortages, charges, railroad strikes, anything else that comes our way that we have to navigate. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me, so we have a second, we have a repeater, but we're going to move forward. Ms. Goldradin, did you want to ask an additional thing?
Yes, I just wanted to go back to some of the statements that were made. Thank you again for having this. The senior freeze, you have to fall into certain categories. So that's number one. The anchor program, it's not guaranteed for 20 years. If we're in the middle of a recession, this program could go away. Third, regarding the fundraising committee that I mentioned in the ad hoc, people weren't talking about grant writing. They were talking about actually engaging donors, whether it's local donors, state donors, go to heavy people, people who have billions of dollars. There was no committee done to engage outside donors. I mean, maybe somebody wants to make a building and have their name on it, and it'd be a great charity deduction. Nothing was ever done. So I think that was one of the big things that came out of that ad hoc meeting 3 years ago that some kind of fundraising donorship meeting would be done. Again, nothing's a guarantee in this world, but I think in light of the recession we're about to enter and an inflation, I think I really don't know. I think it's going to be everybody's individual decision. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Goldred, and it will be everyone's individual decision. Thank you for your comments. I will tell you that there will be continued conversation about donor engagement. Actually, I had hoped to go to the, well, I still hope actually to go to the Cherry Hill Education Foundation golf dinner. I've got to come up with that money. I may need to do a fundraiser, but that's a good thing because that means they'll raise some nice money, which they've very charitably contributed to schools. When we're talking about tax deductions, we are talking about something that's probably a 501c3. One of the things I've actually worked with, when I say work, I've tried to engage in a conversation with our state governing body, New Jersey School Boards Association, because, and the theory goes, and by the way, I work in fundraising, but the theory goes that if there are almost 600 districts in New Jersey. If someone's done this well, we should learn from them. And that's a continuing conversation. But I will say in the limited time that I've spent talking to our rep and the leadership there aren't phenomenal, and when I'm talking about private donor relations initiatives. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't work in Cherry Hill, and that doesn't mean we won't do that. That still is something we're handling under the umbrella of alternative funding through our business and facilities committee under Miriam's leadership. I'd like to see us make some progress on that, but there is a scale piece to this. We are talking about the better part of $400 million. We are talking about alternative funding, not coming from Cherry Hill, of $113 million. That doesn't exist in the private sector unless you're talking about an Oprah moment, a Zuckerberg to Newark schools moment, which, by the way, don't have a lot of A, history, or B, track record. So there's a lot to consider. However, we won't stop considering it given this. But look, I've worked hard for many years at this. That's not the solution to where we find ourselves now, but it is an incredibly important thing as we steward funds of the public that we continue to uncover every rock. And I will engage again with NJSBA to figure out, because there's got to be a success story somewhere. They tell a story. So one of the things about it was like a North Jersey type of thing, and they got some nice alternative funding because they could put this digital sign that looked onto New York. And because of that geographic proximity, they were able to do something that no other district had been able to do. So there are weird, crazy things. The question is for us, how do we systematize it? I did want to ask a follow-up question to this, and this will sort of wrap up our time, but Mrs. Sugars, you've been engaging with Mr. Garrison. There is these letters that we've gotten from the state. What does it mean? What have they communicated with us? Is this something, how do we know essentially that these funds will flow in with an affirmative vote on October 6th?
As you pointed out, Mr. Avadia, in your timeline, Garrison Architects, after the board approved the scope of work, submitted these projects to the state of New Jersey Department of Education. There was an application for every single school. That application had a cost estimate form. It had letters to the county superintendent. It had plans, ed specs, et cetera, et cetera. All of that information was reviewed and the applications were approved. The applications, the approval of such monies is in the form of a preliminary eligible cost letter. You may recall that at a board meeting where there were 19 PEC letters. The 19 PEC letters then were put into the bond question that you see today from Bond Counsel. So the preliminary eligible cost letters were offered to the Board of Education. Board of Education, at my recommendation, was pleased with this offering. As you pointed out, $113 million. actually more than that, but we're assuming an 85% reimbursement. So the board accepted those letters, and then they became final eligible cost letters. So we have the preliminary step, accepted the money, thank you, the 113 million, and we have final eligible cost letters. These are public documents. Department of Education keeps track record. Mrs. Sugars in the business office has such letters.
That's great. Well, I think if Mrs. Wilson came on, she would tell us that we have time for probably not another question, but nonetheless, we've got a new hand up, and we'll have this be the final question before we really go into wrap up. But it's Carolina Bevid. I think I've learned the right pronunciation, and the floor is yours.
You got it right, Mr. Ovadia. Carolina Bevid, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So I hope I can state this question clearly. So I know that state funding has been a problem for Cherry Hill, and I know that we are in the process of being fully funded. However, I think of state funding as kind of like a bonus, right? It's kind of flexible because depending on who's in power, it could the formula can change, or like what happened to us before, it could get taken away. So I want to I want commitment from our leadership that the money that we do have and the money that we will be getting in fair funding, that we are going to be budgeting that money for upkeep for if this bond passes, for the upkeep of these systems, so that we don't need another gigantically massive bond in the distant future, that we are going to have learned that we need to keep up with these things on a more regular basis, as well as we can with the money that we have when we have it. And then also, making sure that when we don't have it, we have it budgeted within the money we do have to keep up with repairs as well. Because, with 19 schools replacing all the systems at once, if they all start to fail at once again, that's going to be another gigantic cost. So I guess just what is the plan for keeping up with maintenance in the future, knowing that state funding can't really be counted on as a guaranteed income?
Thank you, Ms. Bevid. That's a great question. I think it's within what you're saying also, but I think it also begs the other question. This is not a blank check. What happens with these dollars, with these projects? How do people know they're getting what we've put out there? And two, I know we work on long-term facility pieces. What's the mechanism and system for that? And I think, Dr. Meloche, let's start with you, but I think it's going to be in your frame over there that this will probably be best answered.
Thank you, Mr. Vadia, and thank you for the question, Ms. Bevid. So the $113 million from the state's required to pay it, right? There's a legal contractual piece that's there with their approval, the board's acceptance of it, of the letters and the information. So, that we will continue to expect will come through from the state. There has not been an example that has occurred where the state has defaulted on that in any previous referendum that have gone through. So we have no reason to believe that they would default moving forward. In terms of the maintenance programs, what it looks like in the district moving forward, I can talk about what we've done over the course of the last 10 years or so, and more specifically, what we've done over the course of the last 6 or 7 years in terms of the infrastructure and the systems. We continue to look at things in 5, 10, and 20-year timeframes about the length, for how long they will exist, and in terms of what our planning is. We have a Board of Education that has been willing to work along with professionals and with the district administration, to plan to put this together. And then I believe we'll continue to see that as we move forward. So, we have a preventative maintenance plan as we transition, just the reality of changing the infrastructure systems, the HVAC, the unit ventilators that are in our schools, all of which are well over 50 years old, all of which have outlived their average life expectancy by 25, 30 or more years. The ability to step in now with new systems, new door systems, new hardware, have bathrooms that are accessible, air that is appropriate within schools at all times, will allow us to, it'll be easier to maintain that, than to try to fix systems that are constantly broken because they just aren't produced anymore. So there'll be continued commitment from the district. I hope there'll be a continued commitment and involvement from the community to support education in Cherry Hill. We're at a very special time in Cherry Hill here in 2022, where all the different groups are coming together and have been supportive of identifying the needs and talking about where we are moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. There is a document that, that we also keep, the long-term facilities plan. So, Ms. Bevitt, to the extent that there's more to say about this, definitely continue to engage. But I think it's a great question. Thank you for that. We do find ourselves in a place to start to wrap up. And so I will turn it to my partner in crime on the board, Miriam, to tell us about next steps and how we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Badia. So, a few things I just want to kind of say, and I think it's a question that prevails, which is, we know that, the vote will take place on October 6th and the bond will pass or it won't. And, I want people to know that the board is ready and the administration is ready for to kind of to move forward on October 7th with whatever the outcome is. And I think the reality is, if it does not pass, I want to be clear that because this came up as a question to me last weekend, oh, well, won't we do all these projects? And the answer is we will not. We will look to our critical needs list and we will start to look at how do we get those projects done using both capital reserves, and perhaps we'll have to look at within our operating budget as well, which, that's far from ideal because that impacts the potential to impact us in a way that I think the community probably, would not want, and we certainly don't want. So, I think it's not that we haven't discussed what will happen next, whether if the bond passes or doesn't pass, but we're ready to deal with that on October 7th. But we're hoping that the community will speak its mind, and I want people to know that there's lots of options for voting. So. Because this has also been coming up, and hopefully we're going to ask Mr. Garrison to assist with the website to ensure that there's information on where to vote so people know where to go. So people can vote by mail, which if you've received a ballot, you can send that in. You can drop it in a mailbox or in one of the election boxes that are placed around Cherry Hill and the county. People can also go to early voting sites, which are also listed on, I believe it is the state website. So people can go, I recommend to a parent who asked me about that to Google early voting in Camden County. And there are multiple sites where people can vote if they're not going to be around on October 6th, or if that time doesn't work for them. And then lastly, the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. On October 6th. And we would invite everyone to go to your polling place. I do want to mention there are several polling places that have been moved. I think there are 3 or 4 districts that are going to be voting at Cherry Hill High School West this year because of a need to change the location. That information I know is listed on the Cherry Hill Township website, and I believe it's being updated at the polling place information on the state's website, I think through our county. So there's other entities involved. So we thank you for getting out the word. We have multiple other opportunities that board members will be at back to school nights. We will be at several PTA meetings. We'll be engaging, Ms. Winters and I are going to be speaking to some senior citizens board this week as well. We're trying to get ourselves out there as much as possible to answer questions. We want to make sure people have as much information as they need to vote. So we look forward to this, and we look forward to October 7th to working together as a board representing the students and the community and with the district in moving our district forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. And we'll, this is a special meeting because I almost never use first names, but I'm on a roll. So Joel, you are, take us home, what parting thoughts from you?
Sure, happy to do that. First, to those members of the community that joined tonight, this is the kind of engagement that we relish on the board, look forward to, certainly on this incredibly important issue, but on everything going forward. We value your participation, your engagement, your comments and questions. So let me just real briefly, I'll finish up with a question I got at back to school night at Cherry Hill West. I was fortunate to be there this past week, and a parent came up to me and asked me to simply level set for her as quickly as possible. Why is this bond important? Why are we doing this now? What has happened over these past so many years? And she's at the time we were standing in an area of one of the hallways there that was in a bit of disrepair. Which was probably good timing. I simply said to her, and I called upon, for those that know me, I'm a recovering litigator and trial lawyer, so I use analogies often. And I said, here's how I see this as a parent, really. That is 30 years ago or so, the state, when they began to underfund so seriously Cherry Hill, they started a fire. And every year for the next 30 years up until this current year, they added a little more gasoline to it by pulling away water. So the district didn't have the opportunity to do the kind of work that was otherwise necessary to keep these schools in the condition that we all wanted them to be in. And we all know they can be and will be if the bond is successful. So this is the only opportunity, then the best opportunity, especially with so much contribution from the state, $113 million, to begin to get that water back, get that money back, to start planting again those seeds from all the fires of 30 years that have harmed the schools. Of course, that's the analogy. They weren't real fires, but that's that, and that she loved that. So that makes a lot of sense. That made more sense to her than going to the websites and looking at all the numbers, though those are so important. And we certainly hope that you'll take advantage of all of the data, the information on the website and the flyers that's out there to educate yourselves and make the vote that you believe is best for yourself, for your family, for the future here in Cherry Hill, for the students, not just today, but for decades to come. But again, thank you so much for engaging and joining our town hall tonight.
Thanks, Joel. And Gina, just any parting thoughts?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Just to kind of echo what was just said, I think when you look at the history of funding in Cherry Hill, and this was just brought up by the last caller, I used to work for the state on budget issues, and state budgets are capricious, right? You don't know from year to year what's going to happen with our funding through the funding formula, whether it'll be fully funded or not, depending on who's in power in Trenton and what's going on. What we do know is that if this bond referendum passes in October, we are guaranteed to get over a third of the money that we need to make these critical repairs back from the state and the federal government. That's not something that's capricious. That's not something that's a bonus. That's something that we will get guaranteed to help us bring our schools to the level that we know they can be at. I mean, one thing I've been thinking about is what an amazing job all our teachers and students have done over the past few years. And especially, during the pandemic, they did so much with so little. I just keep imagining, what could our fantastic teachers do if they had adequate facilities and resources to teach our kids at the level that we all hope that they'll be taught, And I think as a community, when we talk about Cherry Hill, when we talk about what our schools mean to us and what they represent for all of us together, and what this bond envisions for us as a group, I really think that there's a lot of great reasons that we should all take a look at Cherry Hill tomorrow. Look at the information that's out there. Come see me and Ms. Stern and Mr. Avadia and all of us at PTA meetings, at back to school nights. Ask us more questions leading up through the next 3 weeks. Inform yourself about what's going on, and then come out and vote. Whichever way your vote is, come out and vote and let us know, what you think this should look like for our future, because that's really what this is all about. It's about the future of the next generation of Cherry Hill students and families. So thank you all so much for allowing me to be here tonight and contribute. I really enjoyed hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you out there over the next few weeks.
All right, so my thanks to the panelists, Dr. Melange, your team, and I'll pass over to Dr. Melange to do the final thank yous as we wrap up for the night. As Dr. Melange started with, in 2 days, we have a Board of Education meeting, which is another way to engage. And we look forward to seeing you there or at some engagement in the near future. But Dr. Melange, it is your passing the mic to you.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. And thank you, Mr. Avadia, for moderating the program this evening, for having the opportunity to get so many folks. Everybody that had their hand up had an opportunity to speak and to ask their questions and to share their comments. Again, thank you to the board members. Thank you to the administrative team. Special thank you to Mr. Garrison and Ms. Hung for being on the panel tonight, for being able to answer questions and address. And again, Mrs. Wilson and Mr. Pilvinsky, thank you for your guidance and for your work and keeping us online. Take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon.
Good night.